Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining in for the Atlas Exchanging Knowledge lecture number 3, today with Ezio Manzini and Dr. Albert Fuster on the city of proximity, an emerging scenario for sustainable and resilient cities. We're very, very lucky to have you both here today. I'll say a few quick words just to give you a bit of a context of our event and our talk. So my name is Miriam Dreyer. I'm the researcher for the Atlas project and coordinating the lecture series. This lecture is an EU-funded lecture, and it is organized through the ECIA, which stands for the European Council of Interior Architects. And the ECIA is an institution that represents interior architects and designers all across Europe. We currently hold 20 member states and organizations representing many, many thousands of interior architects and designers across Europe. And many of you from many European countries are here today to listen to the talk, so welcome. And recently, the ECIA has been awarded an EU grant for a project called the BCSP. And the BCSP stands for Building on Connections for a Stronger Profession of Interior Architects and Designers. And this is really what we're all about and what we'd like to do. So it's really about promoting the diversity, the strength, and the wonderful work that we do in the field. And it combines this under one theme, which is different cultures, shared values, one profession, which I find quite beautiful. Now, this project, the Atlas project, is a sub-project of the BCSP, and it is very much concerned with knowledge exchange. And our project team consists of Professor Graham Brooker, who's the project manager, who's also here in the video, hello, who's the head of program for interior design at the Royal College of Art in London, and myself as the researcher and organizer of these lectures. And together we think that knowledge exchange is really in the way of, getting to talk to each other, getting to exchange, explore the depth and the rich nature of all aspects of interior architecture, talk about what we do in our work. And with this in mind, we are creating the Atlas. And the Atlas, for those of you who haven't heard about it yet, is an archive. It will be a digital archive, an online repository of all things interior architecture and design that is currently being built by Field Studio in the UK, who are brilliant graphic designers. So they are currently developing this to be launched in spring early next year. And it will effectively become what Graham calls it, the go-to wiki interior. So it will hold a rich variety of books, films, podcasts, talks, events, papers, tutorials, magazines, and so on and so forth, all related to interior architecture and design. And at that hold lots of different topics as well, such as building reuse, well-being, phenomenology, materiality, interior theory, conventions and codes, and many, many more. So as I mentioned, it's supposed to be launching in spring next year. And to build up towards that, we set up this monthly lecture series, Atlas Exchanging Knowledge. And with this one being number 3, which means we already had one in September and in October. I'm quickly gonna jump through them. So the lecture in September was with Graham Brooker and Silke Langenberg from ETH Zurich on building repair. And the October one was with Dr. Susie Atteville and Dr. Tune Christian Weikler on practice research PhDs in interior design. And both of them, if you've missed them, no problem. They're already on YouTube, so you can just look it up. Search ECIA, Atlas Exchanging Knowledge, and you'll find them there. And of course, you'll also find them on the Atlas archive once it launches. So now, before I introduce our special guests for today, I'd like to announce the next upcoming lectures, with the one in December being with Dr. B. Plevitz and Dr. Inge Sommers on the 13th of December, talking about as found experiments in preservation. So mark your calendars. This is going to be really great. And then in January, we have a lecture by Massimo Hamadi and Anya Dirks on smart technology in the interior. And we close off in February with Matthew Freeman and Joanna Cloy talking about prioritizing health and well-being in interior design. And now for today, I'm very honored to introduce to you Professor Ezio Manzini from the Politecnico di Milano in Italy, and in conversation with Dr. Albert Fuster from the Glasgow School of Art in Scotland, with their contribution about the city of proximity, an emerging scenario for sustainable and resilient cities. Dr. Albert Fuster is an architect and academic lead of the Highlands and Islands campus of the Glasgow School of Art. With his focus on design for social innovation and creative skills, he coordinated the platform Design for City Making, Social Innovation in Urban Contexts, settled at Elisava in Barcelona, together with Professor Ezio Manzini. For over 3 decades, Professor Ezio Manzini has been working in the field of design for sustainability. Most recently, his works have focused on social innovation as a major driver for sustainable changes. In this perspective, he started DESIS, an international network of schools of design active in the field of design and innovation for sustainability. In 2024, the Design Research Society awarded him the Lifetime Achievement Award for his work, and we can't wait to hear more about it. Thank you for being here today to the both of you, and Albert, you've got the word.
All right, thank you very much, Miriam, and thank you, Graham, for inviting us to this beautiful talk as part of this Atlas Talks of the EU-funded project. And yes, mentioned by Miriam already, I'm here at the Glasgow School of Arts, but I had the luck to know directly Ezio while at Elisava, Barcelona. As it's been said, Ezio is a reference in the world of design, and especially recently a reference on the wall of design for social innovation. And I had the pleasure to work with him launching this platform, Design for City Making, that was a transversal platform that connected students, research programs with a clear aim on impact on the urban environment. For sure, Ezio will talk a lot about that. I would only highlight some of the incredible qualities that Ezio brings to the conversation on design, how it is important to have a constant criticality of how designers interact with the world and how we deal with all the ethical, social, environmental, and even political dimensions of the world we inhabit. So here, as part of the European Council of Interior Architects, I think that it's key to listen to his voice, to his constantly cutting-edge approach to the things that we are tackling as humanity, as planet, but most importantly, always suggesting entry points for transformation, for meaningful transformation. So not only blocking us with the overwhelming challenges we're facing, but always trying to find out entry points that allow us as creative practitioners, as architects, as designers, to find out paths for meaningful transformation. So thank you very much, Ezio, for being here, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Albert. Thank you, Miriam, and thanks to the many that are listening. And unfortunately, I cannot see you, but I hope that my thought can be useful to go on in a conversation. And when I've been invited to this series of conferences of interior design or interior architecture, I asked what was the meaning, because it's a term that could be very large. And in between the many meaning, there is also the meaning of urban interiors. And I must say, even though I've not used it until now, this term, if you permit it, I will use it because it seems to me very useful to talk about a way to look to the city. So normally or very frequently, the city is seen a plan, that means seen by the airplane. That is important. You see many things on the plan, or seen the building. That is very important. The city is done also of buildings, but mostly the city is a kind of very intricate network of different system service interaction that happen with the communication. And this is the way in which normally the citizens see the city. So I would say that the normal city is seen by the citizen as an interior, the place where they are walking or the place where they are driving a car or moving through some underground. So the notion of urban interiors could be very near to the way in which I started to look to the city. And the topic of proximity linked to the topic of city, in my view, brings in this direction. And beyond that is, in my view, and this is a proposal of my lecture, a very important keyword for any possible society that we could try to build in the frame of an ecological society. So proximity is is not the only one, but is one of the main issues that has to be dealt with if we talk about the transition toward an ecological society and therefore also an ecological city. Every time this story about proximity is not new, but we have to in some way define what is happening now, why many people, not only me, as many most important people, are talking about the city of proximity or the city of 15 minutes, as we will say in a while, in the background of what has been the city when we are not talking about the city of proximity, that we can call the city of distance. But to arrive to the city of distance, let's make also a two-step backward. So before the modernity, we could have an idea of the city that was by definition, by necessity, a city of proximity. What you see here is a beautiful fresco that is in Siena, by the way, very near to where I live and where I'm speaking now, if you want to put me in the space. That is the Allegoria del Buon Governo. That means the allegory of the good government, and has been done in Siena, the Palazzo Comunale di Siena, 44 centuries ago. So what we see, why it's important for us? We see a kind of ideal city, and this ideal city is a city very dense. Houses are nearby, and you see at the same time, in the same picture, the more different activities from work, different kind of activity, craftsmanship, and also playing and dancing. So this was by definition a city of proximity. And it was impossible not to have a city of proximity before having cars, before having telephones, before having the digital device and media that we have today. Because the only way to do whatever in your social life, from organizing your family to organizing your business to organizing your whole life, had to be at a distance that could be covered easily on foot. Of course, there was also some, it's not that this locality was isolated. We know very well there was interacting also at very far distances. But the daily life had to be at the walking distances. So to have the possibility to live and to have all your life at the walking distances, it means that society has to be dense, so every function has to be near to where you are and diversified. So it means that in the proximity, so close to where you are, you can find more or less everything that you need for your life. So we can call this livable proximity. So it's a system of proximity in which, in principle, if you want, it's possible to live. And because there are all the functions that are needed for your life. And now we jump to this other image that, of course, you know even better. That is Le Corbusier. We are, how many, 90 years ago. And it's an image of the city. And it's, you know, it's the Villa Radieuse. And of course, what you see is totally diverse for the previous one, not only for the style, but it's diverse because the houses are very far, and practically what you see are streets with cars, and practically you don't see any human beings. And the idea was the ville radieuse because it was an idea that the previous pre-modern cities, so this density and proximity was very non-hygienic. It is true that it was, we are not to romanticize how the life was in the pre-modern cities, but for sure, driven by this idea of something hygienic, there was the idea of having distance in between the different buildings, and afterwards something else happening. So it was not only the idea of how to organize the buildings in the space, la ville radieuse, but also how to reorganize the functions. And this image has been very, very powerful, just to everybody knows, but this is a picture that I took 1 week ago that I was in China, but it could be everywhere. And if you look at this one, assume that the first one is very well designed, it's practically the same. What you see are some big buildings, some big roads, many cars, and no human being around. So, as we know, we in Europe are lucky because the center of our cities are mainly old cities with some character of the pre-modern city. This one, all the new cities that has been built in the world has been built on the basis of that image. That this means that visions and scenario can be very powerful, especially when the vision, we could add, is coherent with some economical interest, as it has been. So we can say that in the name of efficiency and hygiene, and driven by powerful economical interest, both on one side the new technologies and on the other side design and organizational skill have been used to make it possible what before was not possible. So before, as I said, it was needed to live nearby with different functions around you to have the possibility to organize your daily life. Nowadays, all these technologies and the design and organizational capabilities are being used to make it possible for us to live even when we are distant, one with the other one. And the result is what for sure you know very well, the reorganization of the city in monological zones, so the so-called zoning. And the monological zones means that the functions are separated to be more efficient, and the life, the unity of my life is me, the human being, that is obliged in some way to move from one zone to the other, mainly, ideally, in these new cities by car. Something less than 1 century later, we can see that this trend toward distancing the people between people and the different functions is really tragic, both in ecological terms and in sociocultural and political implications. And there is probably no need to be said, but the most evident motivation, the most evident aspect is the one of traffic and pollution. And I can say, as a matter of fact, if myself and many other people are now talking about the city of proximity or the city of the 15 minutes, it's mainly driven by ecological motivation. So practically all the big cities that I know are now starting to talk about or have started to talk about the city of proximity, and the main drivers have been to try to reorganize the city in a way that technically is possible to reduce the non-needed, so to reduce the need to move from people during their daily life. But it's not only traffic and pollution, but it's also weakening the social fabric. Because if my life is spent going out from my home and having to travel around the cities, and my neighborhoods are doing the same, but in other part of the city without any connection, the result is that the motivation to be together, the motivation to create social networks at the local scales become much more weak, and therefore the people become much more alone. And as I think that everybody knows now, because it has been also proved by many scientific research, loneliness now is more than a disease. It's a real kind of tragedy that created a lot of difficulties, not only for each individual person psychologically, because at the end of the day, we are social animals, but also to practically organize a society all done by individual, because a society was thought as something that is also endured by some local molecular form organization. And I would say also politically, because I am more than convinced that the idea of fear that is so frequently around in between different people is something that derive mainly from the issue about being alone. All this together ask us to think about proximity. And of course, is not to have a kind of nostalgic idea of what was the proximity of the past, because we could like it or not, but it will not come back. But we have to rediscuss what could be the idea of proximity today, when we need rediscover the importance of being close. At the same time, we cannot forget that we are also connected, and to be connected is one of the main drivers of change that are happening. So in some way, the kind of proximity that we have to talk about is a hybrid proximity that have to rediscover the importance to be close in the physical space, but also based on the possibility of having networks that are on the larger scale. So given that, we need maybe to go a little bit more in depth on the notion of proximity. And that is, in all the languages that I know, is the condition of being close. But it is so interesting for me, because in all the languages that I know, proximity has a double meaning. One meaning is the operational proximity. One meaning is operational proximity, and it's a condition in which we are near, and being near, we can do something together. So it's a functional issue. So being near is possible to do something together that have a meaning. But proximity is not only the functions that could be near and permit to make something together, but it's also a relational proximity. So in every language, there is the idea that we can be open in face to somebody else. We can feel empathy for somebody else. We can feel this sense of proximity. And this is very important in our life. So it's a condition in which someone feels close to somebody else and establish relationships of care. And this issue about the possibility, thanks to the relational proximity, to establish proximity, relationship of care is extremely important, as we will see in a while. Why, in my view, is so powerful this concept of, because at the end of the day, at least for me, for many people that I met, the interesting thing is the quality of the relationships in between the people. And the quality of the relationship are, at the end of the day, the capability of taking care one with the other one. So there is, as we will see, a relation between the idea of proximity, especially the relational proximity, and the idea of care. But both the relational quality of our interaction and the notion of care and the condition of care cannot be designed directly, because our human interaction, and luckily we cannot design the human interaction. But the relational proximity is related with a double link with the operational proximity. So if we cannot directly design the relational proximity, we can design the operational proximity that could generate the condition in which relational proximity become possible. So this is why, by a point of view of designer, this notion of proximity is so powerful, because we can do a lot at the level of the operational proximity, having in mind that we are creating a context, an enabling system in which the relational proximity become possible. And when the relational proximity become possible also the relationship of care. I have no time now to discuss so much, but I think that many of you will know, as me, or even better than me, then the notion of care is for sure the first central keyword of any possible sustainable ecological society. So before I said the proximity, but proximity is related to care. And it is related to care because, as I found out in the books of this very important author for me, Maria Puig della Bella Casa, that wrote several books. One is Matter of Care, in which she underlined that caring is a sense of reciprocity, and we have to be in touch. So caring means touching each other. And to be in touch, you have to be close, of course. So one motivation for the crisis of the city of distance is that in distance you cannot care. And if you cannot care, you have a whole society and a whole city that is a careless society or careless city. And this is a very bad condition in which to live. And the care is not only in between human beings, but it's also in between the human being and the environment. So this carelessness of our society, of our cities, is one of the elements that generates both the environmental and the social crisis in which we are. So I will not say that this is the solution, the only solution, but this is a very important change that we can try to focus and try to think how to do. So if we can operate on the relational proximity to generate the condition for the relational, we can operate on the operational proximity, so on the functions, to generate conditions for a relational proximity. This is a very important discovery, I think, and give us a direction on which to work. And care as for proximity, already said. And here comes what is the core of my presentation today. This is the city of proximity as the city that care. And this put together these two terms and project the idea of this vision of the city, this scenario of the city, in the direction that for me is the one that we have learned after 50 years of talking about sustainability and social sustainability and city sustainability to be the core issue, proximity and care. To talk about scenario will not say that this scenario will happen, because this scenario is in competition with other scenarios. So very, very shortly, I have to indicate at least what I see as two other scenarios that are in competition with the scenario of proximity, and therefore for who will work on the directional scenario of proximity, we have to know where the risks comes from. So the first one is the scenario of the smart and green city. The words are why not to be smart, and green is good. But if you look to this image, at the end of the day, this image is not so different from the image of the Ville Radieuse de Le Corbusier. We see some buildings somewhere. Okay, here there are some people on walking. It's not clear what they do, but they are walking, and there are systems for transportation. So this scenario is the one that says mainly we can do more or less the same, but in a smarter and greener way. And in my view, this update a model that cannot work. By the way, this is when the journal, when the policy maker, when also the United Nations, well, in the United Nations there is everything, but in the case, in Europe, we talk about the Green Deal and the cities is largely, let's put a lot of technology in our city and we will solve the problem. So dear citizens, relax, you have nothing special to do, maybe to deal with the garbage, but not so much. and all the other things will be done by our fantastic technology. I have not the time now to explain why, in my view, this is a model that cannot work, but in any case, it's a model and it's very strong. It is not the model of the 15-minute city. There is also another model, another scenario that is emerging that is less told as something possible. I'm sure nobody say that is good, but it's a lot of what is happening in the change in the cities today, and not only the big cities, also the small villages. Unfortunately, that is this vision that everything can be done at home and everything can come at home. So in some way, it's the end of the city. So you have no need to go in the street. You have no need to go to make your shopping. You have not to need to meet the people in the arena, in the piazza. You can stay in your home and have everything that you need. Of course, this is a very dystopic idea of the future in which we can talk about connect and loneliness. And for what regards the city, as we are seeing already now is happening, it's a city desertification. So the die of the public space, a space in which many different things can happen together. So this is not there are not many people that propose it as a positive story, but it's what is, at least in the case that I know, it's practically happening. So in some way, these two other scenarios are the main competitor with the city of proximity. They are very powerful for different reasons, but also the city of proximity has some power. Because when I talk about scenarios, it's not only a dream, it's not only, oh, there is a good idea, we should or could do something like this, but there is something is happening that if it could be promoted, it could be developed more, could become a reality, could move from being an image to be something real. This is in the notion of scenario, is not a dream. A scenario is an image. It may be a dream, but that in certain condition can become true. So this scenario of the living proximity is, I think I can be very quick because I said already practically everything. It's a proximity system where everything you need in everyday life is just a few minutes to walk from where you are. And it means that you are not obliged, you are not in a cage in your neighborhoods. It's simply that if you want in your neighborhood, you can find whatever you need. Afterwards, you can also go and do something in other place, of course. And at the same time, it's a proximity system where it's possible and probable that people can meet, start conversation, decide to plan something to do together. And this is, again, what I was saying before, this double meaning of the term proximity applied to the city that create a proximity system, means a system of different functions that are sufficiently close one with the other one and sufficiently diverse to be a livable proximity. And at the same time, because take many people moving in the same area, in the same system of proximity, they have much more possibility and probability to meet and to start conversation and maybe to rebuild some social fabric. I say this is a scenario and not simply a vision because something make it possible. And there are three main, at least for me, there are three main stories that can be said to motivate why it is a viable scenario. One is social innovation, one is public policies, and one is what we have learned as designer about proximity. So social innovation, this could be all other lectures that I'm not going to do now, but I have to let you know that when I talk, and not only me, many people that you can meet today talk about social innovation. We talk about a very precise phenomenon that started at the beginning of the 21st century, so 20 years ago, in which we observed that some people was doing something that was not obvious, was not the mainstream. The mainstream representation narrative about society, and it's not only a narrative, it's also a reality, is that the society moved toward being individuals, many individuals put together. No one of what was the original traditional social fabric will resist. We will have only and sometimes also in competition. And we started to see there was a group of people that was started to organize something differently. That could be, I'm talking about 20 years ago, people starting to live nearby and share some service or some spaces, people that was in some way helping each other in what is called the circle of care, that are integrated with doctors and nurses, but there are the people that are kind of mutual relationship of care. We start to see different way of organizing relationship between people in relation to food, so new collaborative food networks, way of working with the Fab Lab, with the movement of the maker that started to break the idea that the only future of production had to be the big factories, but will possible also have local production, a kind of digital craftsmanship. And AI could continue. Practically, there are no area of the daily life that has not been invested in some way by some experiment like this. So what they have in common, why we observed that they were interesting, is because instead of being individual and passive and competitive people, these were active and collaborative people. So people that by choice choose to do something together. And doing something together, they started to rebuild communities. There was also a community who was living close, nearby, so new community of place, community built on a place. And given this, they introduced in the place where they work new functions. And if you remember what I said before, we need to have a proximity system in which there are many functions, so they enriched the proximity system. So in some way, for me, I had to make it very short, but the building blocks of a possibility to talk about proximity, not only as a dream, but a viable perspective, are that we have had 20 years of this kind of experimentation. So we can talk about proximity and the city of proximity today because we have an idea of how it could be, because we have seen this constellation of innovation in the cities that tell us stories about how this could be, and we can promote it to make people imagine how this proximity system could be. 20 years later, because as I said, the observation started 20 years ago, these constellations of idea started to create, in relation to the city, because today now we are talking about the city, new general visions. That is exactly the city of proximity. I prefer to call city of proximity than the normal, very often used city of 15 minutes, not because they are not diverse. It's simply, if I say proximity, it includes the functional and the relational side of proximity, where the city of 15 minutes is mainly the functional side. So it says, around me, there is what I need in my daily life. So if this has been the move, at a certain point, we started to have policies that in some way supported this idea. And so we have, in the moment in which we had the public policies that recognize the value of social innovation, of which I talked about before, just now, they can do a lot to stimulate and support this social innovation to generate new forms of governance. To do that, they could be done in many different ways. Luckily, this is good because ecology is also diversity, so there are different strategies. So one of the cities that has also helped a lot to bring the notion of social 15-minute city, of city of proximity, in the debate has been Paris, because since 5 years now, the mayor of Paris, the lady mayor of Paris, took the idea of the city of 15 minutes, la ville de quart d'heure in French, as one of the main program of her administration. And therefore, there was an idea of reorganizing the city at the local scale and transforming in some way many different branches, many different bodies of the administration in something that could promote new form of proximity from the municipal office that evolved toward being distributed in the city and be kind of citizen kiosk, as in this case, toward the school that could become a kind of hub of cultural and social-cultural activities in the neighborhoods. And given there is one school at least for every neighborhood, they are really very well distributed. To have the local libraries that could become a platform for art and culture, to transform the public space in multi-purpose platforms, and so on and so forth. So in this case, we had that the city decided to reorganize, to take some idea that came from the previous social innovation and reorganize some element, some part of the same structure of the city in a way that is the way that support the possibility to live in the proximity, and therefore enriching the system of proximity, generating what is called the city of the 15 minutes or the city of quart d'heure. Another possibility, there are, as I said, many different possibilities. I quote what has been done in Milano for many years now that has been in the same direction, but quasi-symmetrical. So in the case of Milano, it's used this term, the pact with the citizens. So it's not the city that from the center has organized something directly, but something happened in the society. So I take here, for instance, one neighborhood that's very well known in Milano for this kind of initiative, where a group of active citizens started to use a platform, a very simple platform, to organize together some activities. The one that you see here has been really, the beginning has been very simple, very banal. Somebody organized themselves to have a breakfast in the street every Sunday. And progressively, this breakfast in the street grow. And the good thing of the city is that instead of saying, no, you cannot do it because this space is public space, you cannot use it, they let them do it, and in some way they encourage it. And the same citizen started to take care, to help the administration to take care of the physical environment. One important change and then put together more people is to transform a square that was in front of the door in a place that was without car and permit to the kids to get out from the school and to start again. Also, this one has been started, promoted, and decided by the people, the mother and the father and the kids of that school and the teachers of the school. And afterward, the government of the city accepted it and helped it in making it happen. And finally, more recently, they transformed this as a municipal market and transformed in a social center, so in a community hub. Also, in this case, the municipal market is from the city, but the city permitted to somebody that was willing to start some activity to make them happen. So this municipal market became also a cultural center. There has been a radio. There has been also, strange enough, maybe one branch, one part of my old university, the Politecnico di Milano, opened an office, a place for workshop activities inside the market as a place from which to start activity in design for the city and design for proximity. So in this case, the city do not act directly, but recognize, support multiplicity of bottom-up molecular initiative and establish with them some form of agreement that afterwards has been formalized. And in Italy, they are called the pact with the citizens. So these are the public policies. As you see, they can be bottom-up, as in the case of Paris, or top-down, or mainly bottom-up or mainly top-down. But it's important to say that in any case, they work if work something at the level of at the scale of proximity. So also the bottom-up, also the case of Paris can work because at the end of the day, locally, they have been capable to establish a relationship with local citizens and organization. So in both the cases, having a lively proximity system is fundamental. And design, of course, is needed, is important. And design for proximity, in some way, is beyond everything that I said until now, because all this has been designed, maybe not designed by designer, but somebody designed it. We, the professional designer, we can learn some lesson from what happened, and the lesson, in short, is to enrich and diversify the proximity system. And so there are two main streams of work. One is to imagine, develop a most distributed, open, interconnected socio-technical infrastructure. That means to bring the service, to bring platform for action, the near that is possible to the citizen, and at the same time to imagine and develop opportunities for city to collaborate and to care. These two are the main line of action on which we should work. And thanks, at the end I've been a little bit quick because I had to finish, but I hope that it will be enough to make you understand my proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ezio, for such an interesting, meaningful, and as usually really high quality presentation, both in the terms, in the images you shared, and on the examples. Waiting for some questions that may come through the chat or through social media. I just wanted to mention and open a question for you. You've mentioned this legacy from modern architecture. You also mentioned this so-called zero-minute city, so everything in your smartphone and everything in your front door. And there's a thing here which is the non-frictionality of all these two legacies. So there's no friction with people, there's no friction with the space, everything is smooth and everything is easy. And of course, the thread you're suggesting promotes friction, and maybe even not promotes conflict, but acknowledge or accepts conflict as part of our daily life and our way to inhabit the world. So I'm not bringing it too much to the political dimension, but I just wanted to know your vision on this frictionality, and as well as you mentioned, this care and the reciprocity of touch.
No, yeah, you capture one of the points that are really deeply political. So I'm sure that everybody agree that every design choice is political, because we have to choose depending from our idea and our ethical position, what is good and what is bad to do. Sometimes we are more knowledgeable, sometimes not. What you call the non-frictional is paradoxical, because they propose a non-frictional, and they propose a non-frictional that is based mainly on the laziness of people. So everything at home is you can sit on your armchair and everything happens, so you are not to move. And it's not only laziness, it's also to be scared to open yourself. It's risky to establish real relationships. So you have only mediated relationship with the world. This is proposed, but we know very well that to have everything at home means some slaves that brings you everything at home. So it's not, there is a design choice to do something for the user. So it's a very highly user-centered way of proposing, assuming that the user is very lazy, and assuming that maybe there is somebody else that we do not consider that are in a very bad conditions, that are the ones that bring you the pizza at home, to simplify. So also in that scenario, it's not true that there is no friction. It's told the story that try to tell you, be quiet, be in your room very comfortably, and we will solve all the problem. In between the first, this one that is in some way the emerging one, dramatically emerging one, and the one that is only updating the traditional modern city with more technology, also that one in a different way, in a more acceptable way, but they say, yes, you have your life, you more or less things are the one that you know, and we will solve the problem with, instead of having a normal car, we will have an electric car. Instead of having electricity from gas, you will have renewable. Maybe now they talk also about nuclear energy, but in any case, you don't have to change anything because somebody will solve the problem for you. The other one is, in my view, is frictional because it's human. So frictional means that we have interactions. So it's having the risks of interactions. And the risk of interaction is both so some practical motivation or some as in love. So you can project on somebody and afterward maybe things do not go so well. So it's more risky, but it's human. So in some way, it's the only way to create a basis for a more human way of living. And I don't know if it will win. So I am professionally optimistic. So I think that there are possibilities, but of course the effort is very big to be done, and something has to change because in this moment the mainstream is not going. Even though many mayors talk about the city of proximity, but the reality, there are so many powerful forces that move in the other direction that is a very tough battle to be done.
Sure.
Somebody else?
There was a hand raised a second ago in the Q&A. Where's that?
This is advertisement, so we can have the break in advertisement.
No, there is a question. There is a question which is, in your opinion, what skills are needed for interior architects to contribute to more proximity in society? This is the question.
My answer could be very simple. To be a good interior architect. So, I mean, in some way, the city of proximity is not because this is a conference of interior architects, but the city of proximity is the city of the city interiors. So you are not discussing immediately at the larger scale. You start from what is nearby to you, and what is nearby to you is very near to be the proximity system. So when I say you have to be a good interior architect, is because I think that I am not, I do not define myself an interior architect, but I think that all of us, of the community of the architects, we should, and designer, we should, first of all, recognize the dangers of what is happening. So this kind of desertification of the city on one side and dehumanization of the human. But at the same time, the city of proximity could be a step in this direction, we have also to recognize what does it mean in ecological society. So what does it, we should have some criteria to judge our project. So this maybe would be another lecture, but I can arrive to what for me is the core of this other lecture on design for ecology. What you need is my project diversifying the opportunity for the people? Yes or not? And we should, and this is valuable for sure also for the more traditional interior architect. When you really talk about interiors, you can offer opportunities that are opening new directions to the people. So this is a very important issue. Is the opportunity that I'm offering all very mechanically separated, or there are some symbiosis, something that goes together? Yes or not? So it's a kind of zoning, or it's kind of a mixing different function and creating hybrid solution that help each other, one with the other one, if we have to move. And finally, this is the more complex, is what in the agroecology will be the soil. So the soil is what we don't see. It's under the surface, but the soil is what make possible everything happen. So the soil for us is our project drying everything or maintain and create this kind of complex and non-design, something that cannot be directly designed, mix of relationships that is the ground in which everything else starts, as the soil is the ground in which the new plants can happen. But we have to recognize the value of this kind of complexity, not so clear, mixing way of living, that is the life. And so I think that we should be capable to evaluate what we do, considering some criteria that my one are the one that I'm proposing to you now, without pretending to be convincing in such a few words, but to find our criteria to say what we can do in the facing the crisis that we are seeing around us in this period and probably in the future.
Good. Really interesting. And we have one more that is related to that in the sense of how we do diversify this environment, this urban environment. And it says, considering that cities are often planned to disadvantage to women's ways of circulating around cities, how does the city of proximity care for women lives in cities?
Well, it's not up to me to tell the story because, well, it's difficult for a man to talk exactly what is for the city. I can only say that two examples that I frequently use, not today, but when I talk about this topic, could be, for instance, Barcelona, as Albert knows very well, where the group in the city of Barcelona that deals with the social issue is social issue and feminist, or the feminist planning, or the feminist approach. And Barcelona is a very well-known place in which, with some difficulties, of course, as everywhere, but there is an existing city of proximity that was, I will not use it as an example today because it's a little bit in between the two extremes, Paris on one side and Milan on the other, but it's one of the best examples. And the city of proximity is a city in which you are less alone, for instance, so you can feel more sure. And you can, all the notion of care is a notion that comes mainly from the feminist discussion. And not by chance, also myself, the only quote that I did was this Maria Puig de la Bella Casa, who is a feminist. And another good example, I can tell only the title because it's very, if you search on Google, in the case of Bogota is an extraordinary messy city, but also extraordinarily interesting city. And also by the point of view that we are talking today, and there is a program, not a project, a program already working that is called the Manzanas de Cuidados, that stands for the blocks of the care, that is defined and is under the name of the body, of the public body, is feminism, human, etc., etc. So it's an whole idea of working on the city in the idea of proximity at the end, seen by the point of view of the woman. And just to conclude, but coming back to what I already said, I think that the idea of a city that cares is very much linked to all the story, all the feminist history that we have had, and both in terms of the practicalities, what can be done, but also in terms of the concept, the same idea of reimagine. I've not quoted, I could quote the beginning of the break of the idea of the modernity, of the city of modernity, as being James Jacobs. And this was 70 years ago. No, maybe not 60 years ago. And she was really a way to where Le Corbusier now, it's stupid to simplify the reality of people, is much more complex. But there is a certain way of organizing the city as a machine. It was the machine habité, the house, the machine. It can be also extended to the city. And Jane Jacobs started to talk about the life in the streets and the complexity. For me, what she talked about is what I referred before, the soil, the things that cannot be really designed, but that happen is where really the city after can be alive by every point of view. And Jacobs was probably was not defining herself as a feminist, but for sure it's a kind of mentality that comes from a line of thinking that is more from the human, from the woman, than from the male.
Great. Sorry, Miriam and Graham, I don't know if we're running out of time, but we have a third question on the Q&A that I think deserves.
Go for it. Yeah, I think we should do it.
Okay, so this question is quite strong, and maybe to conclude, what do you do with sustainability in a world with war in the proximity?
Good, thank you. I have to say, I normally, when I give not only this lecture, all my lecture in this period, I start with some word on the war. I have not done it because digital is not being presence, it's different. So I fear to maybe make me misunderstand. But I think that we have to, whatever we do, we have to think what does it mean to do it in a period where we are going toward war. And so what we can do to move toward peace. So do it exist, design for peace? So it's not an issue about, I'm totally, if the person that wrote that question said, why are we talking about this when probably everything will collapse because probably, hopefully not, but in any case, there are possibilities that to finish inside a larger war than the one that we already had. I agree. And we have to ask ourselves as a human being, what we can do politically, shout, go in the street, make strikes, vote, if we have somebody to vote. And but also as a designer, normally I say, whatever create bridges, whatever maintain a conversation. And if the topic is proximity, maybe I'm too naive, but I think that in some way, given that the war is a result of conditions of war, so it's a human construction, for me at least. It's not in our DNA make war. War is a cultural and social construction. So it has, and we could discuss 3 hours now, how many signals we have, in which way they are convincing the more of the people of the inevitability of war. So if it is a social construction, it can also be deconstructed. And if it can be deconstructed, probably there is something that designer can do to help the process of deconstructing the idea that there is only war. And if you talk about peace, they say, yes, but if you want peace, you have to prepare yourself for war. Where for me, if you prepare yourself for war, at a certain point, you make war. We have to prepare ourselves for peace. And to prepare ourselves for peace, we have to create bridges, with the enemies, or the non-enemies, but the ones they pretend to present as enemies. And the designer can generate bridges at a very general scale and also at a more local scale. So by this point of view, maybe I am naive. No, for sure, I am naive, but proximity is a good term. So I don't know if the notion of proximity really help for peace, but for sure do not create condition for war. And therefore, I hope that to think about design for proximity, it's in some way converging to think about design for peace.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you to all. And it has been, well, I hope to meet somebody of you in the next future and you'll say, we have had a digital interaction.
Thanks, Ezio. Thank you very much. And that's a great note to end on, I think.
For sure. Thank you so much, Ezio and Albert, for joining us today. Really, really rich discussion, and looking forward to meeting in person someday.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody. And thanks to all the participants. And we'll see you in the next one. But cheers, Albert. Cheers, Ezio. See you soon.
Thank you very much.
Have a good weekend. See you.
Cheers. Thanks, Luke. Have a good one. Bye-bye.